I clutch the wooden box tighter against my chest as the airport's fluorescent lights buzz overhead. Inside the box is the mask I spent 3 weeks hand-painting gold leaf, cracked porcelain, the last of my rare Venetian pigments. It was meant to be my gift for the family trip, a symbol of unity after years of sacrifice. $10,000 I had wired for our tickets, saved from countless nights bent over lacquer fumes and brushes that left my fingers raw. At the check-in counter, the woman behind the desk frowns at her screen. She types again and again. Finally, she looks up, polite but detached. Signora Bellucci, your name isn't on this flight. Are you sure you're booked? Her words slice sharper than any blade I have used to carve papier-mâché. My throat goes dry. I open my phone, scroll frantically through messages, bank transfers, receipts. Everything is there except the one thing that matters, my boarding pass. I dial my daughter. No answer. I try again. On the third attempt, a message lights up my screen. Mother, I didn't book you a seat. I need this trip for myself. The words burn. Around me, people rush past with rolling suitcases. The loudspeaker announces a delayed flight to Madrid. Children cry. Wheels squeal against tile. Yet all I hear is the sound of paper tearing, as if someone is ripping my name out of the family album. My knees tremble. I grip the counter edge so hard my knuckles ache. The box in my arms feels suddenly heavier, as though the mask inside has absorbed the betrayal. I whisper to myself, though my voice barely escapes my lips, not even a seat, not even a place by her side. The world tilts. I feel the sour tang of metal in my mouth, the sweat gathering at the nape of my neck. My chest constricts as though the mask's painted grin inside the box is mocking me. And then it hits me, not just the ticket. My daughter's words have erased me, carved me out of the journey of her life. I place the wooden box on the table beside me and lift the lid just enough to glimpse the mask inside. White, unfinished, waiting for color. A blank face staring back at me. It drags me backward, 30 years, maybe more, into the cramped workshop where my life truly began. Back then, I was a young widow with a child and nothing but a handful of brushes, powdered pigments, and rent overdue by 3 months. My daughter was 4, still learning to hold a spoon properly. I remember sitting her on a stool by the corner, her tiny feet swinging in the air, while I bent over papier-mâché shells, painting them into something strangers would pay to wear at Carnival. 5 masks a day, 30 a week. Some seasons, I made more than 100 in a single month. By the time my daughter turned 18 and left for Milan, I had shaped and painted over 5,000 masks. Each one a sliver of my spine, each one a piece of my lungs breathing lacquer and glue. I counted not in years but in invoices paid, in euros tucked into an envelope I kept beneath the mattress. By my rough calculation, I saved more than 280,000 euros over those decades. Almost all of it went straight into her schooling. Tuition in Milan, music classes she abandoned after 2 years, then the down payment for her apartment. My own needs shrank into nothing more than strong coffee, a loaf of bread, and just enough paint to finish the next order. Sometimes I would stand at the window late at night, my hands stained with gold leaf, and whisper, "One more mask, Katerina, just one more, and she will have everything you never had." The blank masked motif haunted me. Every new order began with that pale, unmarked face. I always told myself it symbolized possibility, a fresh start. But with every year, I felt it staring back at me with accusation, reminding me that while I gave my daughter color, I left my own face untouched, invisible. I lived behind the mask of sacrifice so long, I began to forget what Katerina looked like beneath it. And yet, I can't deny there were moments of warmth. I remember one winter evening, snowflakes clinging to our window. My daughter, only 8 then, picked up one of my discarded white masks and held it to her face. "Mama," she giggled, "do I look prettier with this?" I laughed, brushing glue from my hands. No mask could ever hide your beauty. She dropped it back onto the workbench, smearing it with chocolate from her fingers. I didn't mind. For me, it was proof. Everything I built, everything I painted, was for her smile. Still, small shadows crept in, even then. She grew older and sometimes treated the envelopes of money as her birthright. "You'll send it, won't you?" she would ask. Not as a request, but as a certainty. And I always said yes. I told myself love meant saying yes. But looking back now, I wonder if that was the first crack. The first sign that she no longer saw me as a mother, but as a provider, a permanent sponsor. I touch the blank mask again and feel its weight. For years, I believed it held hope. Today, it feels like a mirror reflecting only emptiness. I remember her small laughter echoing through the workshop. She was no more than 6, knees scraped from running in the alleys, cheeks smudged with cocoa. She reached for one of my unfinished masks, a simple paper shell, white and fragile, and pressed it to her face. "Mama," she asked through the hollow eyes, her voice muffled, "is this mask prettier than me?" I nearly dropped the brush in my hand. The gold paint shimmered in the lamplight, a thin river trembling on the bristles. I crouched down, pulled the mask from her face, and kissed her forehead. "No mask could ever hide your eyes," I whispered. "Not the brightest, not the most ornate. Your eyes are the only truth I need." She giggled, tossing the mask back onto the table. It left a small crease where her fingers bent it. At the time, I thought nothing of it, just a child's play. But years later, I would remember that crease, a small wound in paper, an omen perhaps. The white mask had been our promise, that nothing would ever come between us, that my sacrifices would always be rewarded with her smile. I carried that promise for decades, painting mask after mask, while her world grew bigger than my workshop. Today, when I see an untouched mask, blank and waiting for color, I no longer see promise. I see the fissure, the place where trust once lived. The first signs were almost invisible, like hairline cracks beneath layers of paint. One afternoon, I asked her about the hotel bookings. She waved her phone, showing me a blurred screenshot. "It's handled, Mama. Don't worry." Her tone was brisk, too brisk. Later, I checked the receipt she forwarded, numbers missing, dates overlapping. I stared at it long into the night, my lamp flickering over the figures. Something didn't add up. I asked again, gently, "Are you sure everything is settled?" She rolled her eyes. "You always worry too much." Her words stung, sharper than any needle I'd used to pierce paper. For a moment, my heart stuttered, whispering, "She's hiding something." But I shook the thought away. Perhaps I am too suspicious, too tired. After all, hasn't she always been my daughter, my reason? I turned off the lamp, telling myself lies I needed to believe. It happened over dinner. A quiet evening, soup steaming in chipped bowls, the smell of garlic clinging to the air. I thought we might talk about the trip, about which city we would see first. Instead, she set her spoon down and spoke as if delivering a verdict. "Mama, I used the money for my own life. You won't be coming." The room fell silent. My spoon slipped from my hand, clattering against the table like a bell tolling. For a moment, I thought I had misheard. But her gaze, calm, almost bored, told me it was real. I felt something in my chest splinter. My hand reached instinctively for the white mask I had been sanding earlier. It slid from my lap, hitting the floor. The brittle shell cracked into 2 uneven halves, staring up at me like broken eyes. I could not breathe. My lips moved, but no words formed. The air was too thick, the betrayal too sharp. All I could think was, I saved her. I gave her everything. And still, she has erased me. It was not the shouting that broke me. There was no shouting at all, only silence. I sat at the kitchen table one morning, staring at the untouched slice of bread in front of me. The butter had melted into a pale puddle, the knife still resting where I had left it. Outside, Venice stirred with its usual chorus gondoliers calling, tourists chattering, church bells measuring time. Inside, I felt as if the world had stopped. On the chair opposite mine lay a white mask, half sanded, waiting for paint. Its empty eyes followed me. For years, I had painted over such faces, layering them with gold, crimson, emerald. Today, I saw only my reflection in the blankness. Hollow, worn, unseen. That was my bottom. A kitchen table, a cold slice of bread, and a mask that told me the truth I had refused to face. My mind spiraled with questions, hammering like fists against my chest. How much longer will I be the servant of her demands? If I keep sending money, what part of me will remain? Am I still a mother? Or just a wallet with a heartbeat? When did love turn into erasure? Each question struck harder than the last until my hands began to shake. I pressed my palms flat against the wood, feeling the grain grounding myself. Then something shifted. I reached for my phone. My thumb hovered over the banking app I had opened and closed a dozen times in the past week. My breath stuttered. I could almost hear my daughter's voice, smooth and certain. "You'll send it, won't you?" For the first time, I whispered aloud, "No." I typed quickly before my courage could dissolve. I canceled the standing transfer. I changed the password. The phone buzzed in my hand as the confirmation flashed across the screen. Done. It was such a small act, just a few keystrokes. Yet it felt like carving through iron chains. My lungs opened, dragging in air I hadn't realized I had been denied. Still, fear clawed at me. What if she cut me out forever? What if I lost not only her affection, but the illusion of family I had clung to for decades? My life might collapse into an emptier silence than I had ever known. But another fear, darker, heavier, loomed. What if I didn't change? What if I continued to pay, continued to bend, continued to erase myself behind the painted smiles of masks I sold to strangers? That path led to a death in life, to a Katerina who no longer existed except as a name on wire transfers. I weighed the two terrors. To lose her was unbearable. To lose myself was annihilation. My choice was clear. I stood up, still clutching the phone. My knees wobbled, but I forced myself toward the wooden box where I kept my unfinished work. I pulled out the blank white mask, the same one that had stared me down at breakfast. I dipped my brush not into gold, not into crimson, but into black. With one deliberate stroke, I painted a single line across the mask's face. A scar, a mark, a refusal. The sound of the brush dragging over paper was soft, almost tender, but it echoed in my chest like thunder. I whispered, voice steady now, "I will no longer let anyone paint on my face." For years, my sentences had been long, apologetic, bending like reeds in the wind. Now, my words came short, sharp, unbending. No more. Not again. This is mine. I felt the tremor in my fingers still, then subside. My heart steadied into a rhythm I had forgotten, my own. I knew the cost. I would face her anger, her accusations, perhaps her abandonment. But I also knew the reward. My survival, my dignity, my return to the woman behind the masks. The breaking point had come, and for the first time, I had chosen myself. The message came 3 days later, just one sentence. "Mother, you are so small-minded." I read it again and again, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something gentler. They did not. The apartment felt quiet after that, but not the peace-filled quiet of Sunday mornings or evenings by the canal. This silence had weight. It pressed on the walls, seeped into the cracks of the floorboards, lingered in the corners like cobwebs. I moved around the rooms carefully, as though afraid to disturb it. Every sound felt amplified. The scrape of a chair against tile, the creak of the wooden stair, the faint rattle of the kettle when it boiled. Even my own breathing betrayed me, too loud, too uneven. My daughter no longer called. When I tried to reach her, the phone rang once, twice, then dropped into nothingness. I told myself she was busy, but in truth, her absence screamed louder than words. I began noticing little things. The way her footsteps used to echo through the hall, absent now, replaced only by memory. The way she would hum, tunelessly when searching through the fridge. Gone. The silence mocked me with what it withheld. On the fourth night, a neighbor slipped a note under my door. Your daughter came by when you weren't home. She didn't wait. No explanation, no further detail. The slip of paper lay on my table like evidence in a trial. I started walking through the apartment at night, bare feet on the cool tile. Each step felt heavier, echoing too loudly in rooms meant for two. Sometimes I paused at her old bedroom door, pressing my palm against it as though I could still feel her presence on the other side. Nothing. The white mask on my workbench remained unfinished, its crack now darkened by the black line I had painted across it. At times I thought I could hear it splinter further when the air shifted. I would glance up, expecting to see shards on the floor. Of course, it was only in my mind, but that phantom sound haunted me, like glass breaking in slow motion. One evening, I opened the window to let in the cool air. Across the canal, a man shouted at his wife. Their argument carried easily through the night. The rawness of their fight almost comforted me. At least they had noise. At least they have something. I sat back down at the table, my phone in my hand, staring at the empty chat screen. I typed a message. I only wanted to be with you, but I couldn't bring myself to send it. The cursor blinked, patient, merciless. I deleted the words and set the phone aside. The calm was unbearable. Not the raging storm I had prepared myself for, but the waiting, the knowledge that something was coming. Every knock at the door made me jump. Every envelope in the mailbox felt suspicious. I half expected her to arrive unannounced, flanked by strangers with papers for me to sign. Each day stretched taut, a string ready to snap. I wanted to scream, to shatter plates, to demand the truth. But I held it all in, swallowing the noise. And the more I swallowed, the tighter the silence gripped me. The knock came at dusk. 3 sharp raps against the wood. Too forceful to belong to a neighbor, too insistent to ignore. My stomach tightened. I knew. The workshop smelled of varnish and dust, but that familiar comfort felt tainted, like perfume turned sour. I set down my brush and wiped my palms on my apron. The unfinished masks on the bench stared back at me, their empty eyes wide with warning. When I opened the door, she was there, my daughter, and beside her, a man, younger than I expected, with sleek hair and the kind of smile that had charm on the surface and cruelty beneath. He held a leather folder against his chest like a weapon. "Mama," she began, voice syrupy sweet. "Can we come in?" I stepped aside, though every bone in me screamed no. They sat across from me at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd eaten bread alone, where silence had strangled me. The air now felt heavier, thick with something poisonous. The folder landed on the wood with a soft thud. She folded her hands, eyes darting toward the folder, then back to me. "Mama, we've been thinking about your future." I said nothing. My fingers traced the rim of my teacup, though the tea inside had long gone cold. Her companion leaned forward, voice smooth. "This workshop, it's too much for you now. All this dust, all these hours bent over masks. You deserve rest." She smiled, rehearsed and brittle. "Yes, Mama, you've worked so hard. It's time to let go." I met her eyes. "Let go of what?" "The workshop," she said quickly. "The building. It's useless now. You don't need it." My heart thudded. The masks on the shelf seemed to lean closer, listening. He slid the folder toward me. "Just a formality. A simple signature. It gives us permission to manage the property for you. We'll take care of everything." I didn't touch it. My voice came out low. "And if I don't sign?" His smile tightened. "It would be complicated." "Why make it complicated?" She shifted in her chair, irritation flashing across her face. Mama, don't be dramatic. It's for your own good. You can't keep this place running forever. Don't you trust me? My hand trembled, but I clasped it tight in my lap. I trusted you with 10,000 euros, and you told me I had no seat on the plane. A flicker of annoyance passed through her eyes. She sighed. That's different. This is about your safety, your future. Don't be selfish. The word struck me like a slap. Selfish. After years, after masks painted until dawn, after money wired until my hands ached from work. Selfish. I leaned back, forcing my breath to steady. Tell me, is this for my future or for yours? The man's jaw tightened. His tone lost its sweetness. Sign it. It's the best option. Otherwise, we'll have to seek legal means. Legal. The word throbbed in the room like a drumbeat. I looked at my daughter, her lips pressed thin, her eyes colder than I had ever seen them. This was no misunderstanding. This was strategy. The folder sat between us, innocent in appearance, deadly in intent. My reflection wavered on its glossy cover. I pushed it back toward them. No. Her chair scraped harshly against the floor as she stood. Why are you making this so hard? Don't you understand? You're old, Mama. You can't cling to this forever. Her words sliced, but anger rose in me like fire. My legs trembled as I forced myself to stand. For years, I had bent, shrunk, folded myself into silence. Not now. I gripped the edge of the table, feeling the grooves carved by decades of meals, arguments, laughter long gone. My voice cracked but steadied. I am not a mask you can wear whenever you please, I said. I am not a costume to put on and throw away. They stared at me, startled. My daughter's mouth opened, but no words came. I took a step forward, chest heaving, eyes burning. This workshop may be crumbling, my hands may shake, but this place, this face, is mine, and I will not sign it away. The silence that followed was sharp, cutting deeper than any shout. The man gathered the folder, snapping it shut. His smile returned, but now it was thin, brittle. You'll regret this. She looked at me one last time, eyes narrowed, filled with something between anger and disdain. Then they turned, footsteps echoing down the hall, the door slamming behind them. I stood alone, the air trembling from their absence. My knees nearly gave, but I stayed upright. For the first time, I felt taller than the walls around me. I glanced toward the workbench. The white mask with its black scar sat in silence, but somehow it seemed to nod. The letter arrived on a Monday morning. A thick envelope stamped with an official seal dropped through the slot with a thud that echoed in my chest. My hands trembled as I slid it open. Inside, summons. My daughter was suing me, claiming ownership of the workshop, alleging that I had promised it to her, that I was no longer competent to manage my own affairs. I sat at the table, the paper spread before me like a death mask. The words blurred, lines of accusation curling around me like ropes. Betrayal I had already endured. But this was exile. Not only cast out from her heart, but now painted as unfit before society itself. I pressed my palms against my temples, fighting the roar in my ears. The neighbors would whisper. The courts would believe paper over truth. And I, Caterina Bellucci, who had painted thousands of faces, would now have mine rewritten as a liar. The next blow came swiftly. A friend slipped me a rumor. My daughter had produced documents, proof that I had signed the workshop over to her months ago. My own handwriting, forged. Even a notary's stamp false, yet convincing. The injustice tasted metallic, like blood. I had always lived with glue on my fingers, paint under my nails, but never dishonor. Now, dishonor clung to me like a second skin. Worse still, there were voices, neighbors, clients, whispering doubt. A woman at the bakery shook her head when I walked past. Such a pity to see her lose her mind. Another muttered, maybe the daughter is right. She's too old to handle that place. Lies spreading like lacquer over a crack, sealing me in darkness. But not everyone believed them. It was Senora Lucia, my neighbor of 20 years, who first knocked on my door with a basket of figs. She pressed them into my hands, her voice fierce. I know you, Katerina. You're no fool. You're no liar. If they want to steal from you, they'll have to step over my body. Her words cracked the suffocating silence. I wept, clutching her hand. For the first time in weeks, I did not feel alone. Then came Marco, a young lawyer, barely 30, with ink stains on his cuffs and fire in his eyes. He had once bought a mask from me for his sister's wedding. Now he stood in my cluttered workshop, flipping through the false documents with a scowl. These are forgeries, he said flatly. Sloppy ones, too. They underestimate you. And me. He looked up, determination sharpening his face. I'll fight this with you. Something fragile stirred in me. Hope, tentative as the first stroke of paint on a blank mask. Together, we began collecting my life as evidence. Old receipts, invoices dating back decades, photographs of me in the workshop with finished pieces. Even a ledger I had kept since 1992, every sale carefully recorded in my looping script. Each page was a fragment of truth, a mosaic to rebuild my face against the lies. But the battle was far from steady. For every fact we unearthed, the other side threw mud. My daughter's partner whispered to clients that I had grown forgetful, careless with money. They brought forward a so-called witness. An apprentice I had fired years ago claimed I had once told him I would leave everything to my child. The cruelty cut deep. I remembered that apprentice, lazy, sloppy, stealing brushes when he thought I wasn't looking. Now his lies were gilded into evidence against me. At night, when the work was done, I sat alone in the workshop. The half-finished masks stared from their shelves, pale and expectant. I whispered to them, "Tell me I am still myself. Tell me they cannot erase me." The silence answered, heavy but listening. And yet, there were moments of reprieve. Lucia returned often, sitting with me over coffee, telling me stories of her youth. Marco laughed once when he dropped his papers into a puddle, his curses more colorful than any carnival costume. These moments were brief breaths, letting me surface before the next wave crashed. Still, fear gnawed at me. Not fear of losing the building, that wood and plaster could vanish, and I might still survive. No, it was the fear of losing my name, my face in the eyes of others. To be remembered not as Katerina the mask maker, but Katerina the senile, the fraudulent. That was a death I could not bear. One night I stood before the mirror, holding a white mask against my face. Its eyes were empty, its smile fixed. I lowered it slowly, meeting my reflection bare. My voice shook as I whispered, "What if they succeed? What if the mask they paint of me is the only one the world believes?" The question hung in the room, unanswered, suffocating. It happened by accident. I had gone to my daughter's apartment one evening, hoping against all reason to speak to her face to face. She wasn't there, but her bag lay carelessly on the sofa, half unzipped, papers spilling out. My hand trembled as I reached to gather them, telling myself I was only tidying, not prying, and then I saw it. A document. My name scrawled across the bottom in handwriting so close to mine it made me nauseous. The workshop deed already transferred. The stamp of a notary pressed firm and dark. My signature, but not my hand. For a long moment I couldn't breathe. My chest hollowed out, my vision blurred. It was like staring into a mirror that reflected a stranger. I pressed the page flat against the table, my fingertips shaking. The loops of the letters were familiar. The flourish of the C perfect, almost perfect, but I knew my own hand too well. This was a mask of me, painted to deceive. The air grew heavy. I whispered into the empty room, "Every mask of lies shows its eyes in the end." I stuck the document back before she returned, my pulse pounding. As I hurried down the narrow Venetian street, the sound of my footsteps echoed like drum beats. I had proof now, Fragile, dangerous proof. Yet fear gnawed me. What if she discovered I had seen it? What if she destroyed it before Marco could secure it? The city's labyrinth of canals felt suddenly conspiratorial, each shadow watching me, each mask in shop windows sneering at my gullibility. But beneath the fear, a spark of strength flared. They had forged my name, but they had underestimated the woman behind it. Marco insisted we practice. The courtroom is theater, he said, pacing in my workshop. You must deliver your truth with clarity. No hesitation. I stood before the mirror that night, the same mirror where I had painted my own face for decades, dabbing rouge for carnival, powdering cheeks before festivals. Now there was no paint, no mask, just Katerina wrinkled skin, tired eyes, lips pressed thin. I held the paper in my hand, my statement scribbled in shaky ink. My voice wavered on the first attempt. My name is Caterina Bellucci, and this workshop is my life. Again, stronger. My name is Caterina Bellucci, and I will not be erased. Again, until my voice no longer cracked. Until my eyes did not dart away from my reflection, but stared directly into it, unflinching. Some nights I broke down, pressing my palms to the mirror, whispering, "Will they believe me? Will they see me?" The silence gave no answer. But the act of speaking, of standing tall in front of my own face, grew into ritual. Neighbors came by, offering encouragement. Lucia patted my cheek. Let them hear the truth in your bones. Marco drilled me with questions, firing challenges like arrows, forcing me to steady my responses. The workshop itself seemed to breathe with me, its shelves of masks witnesses to my rehearsal. Their blank eyes no longer mocked me. They listened, silent allies. One evening, I placed the cracked white mask, the one I had scarred with a black line on the mirror ledge. I looked at it, then at my reflection. For the first time, I saw no difference between them. Both were mine. Both were true. The courtroom was colder than I expected, not in temperature, but in weight. Marble floors echoed beneath every footstep. Benches creaked under the shifting bodies of strangers who had come to watch. The air smelled faintly of dust and paper, heavy with judgment before a word had even been spoken. I sat at the defendant's table, my hands folded tightly in my lap. Across from me sat my daughter, her hair perfectly arranged, her face painted with composure. Beside her, her partner shuffled papers, lips curved in a smug half-smile. A leather folder rested between them, the very same one I had once refused to sign. The judge entered. Everyone rose. The gavel struck, sharp as thunder. This was no longer my kitchen table, no longer a private betrayal. This was war in the open, my life on trial for the world to see. Her lawyer stood first. Smooth voice, impeccable suit. He spoke of concern, of protection. My client only wishes for her mother's safety. Signora Bellucci is nearing 60, working with toxic paints and chemicals, living alone in deteriorating conditions. She has already expressed forgetfulness, already misplaced money. We have documents showing her intent to transfer the workshop for her daughter's care. This is not exploitation. It is compassion. Compassion. The word tasted foul in my mouth. He held up the forged deed, waving it delicately for the judge to see. Proof of her intention. Proof of her trust. My heart hammered, but Marco, my lawyer, rose calmly. Your Honor, he said, voice clear, we will demonstrate that this document is false. And we will show you who Caterina Bellucci truly is. Not a woman losing her mind, but an artist, a mother, and the rightful owner of her work. They called their witness, the former apprentice I had dismissed years ago. He swaggered to the stand, eyes sliding away from mine. She always said, he declared, that one day the workshop would belong to her daughter. She told me more than once. His words sliced, but I clenched my fists under the table. Marco cross-examined swiftly. Which year did she tell you this? The apprentice hesitated. 2 years ago. Marco raised a brow. And yet records show you were dismissed 5 years ago. How curious to hear promises in a place you no longer stood. The courtroom rippled with murmurs. The apprentice faltered, sweating, his mask of confidence cracking. Next came a notary, supposedly verifying the deed. He spoke too fast, stumbling over dates. Marco pounced again, pointing out inconsistencies. The notary had stamped the document on a day his office had been closed for a national holiday. Laughter fluttered briefly through the room before the judge silenced it with a glare. Then came our turn. First, Dr. Romano, my physician of 20 years. He adjusted his spectacles, speaking firmly. Her memory is sharp. She manages her accounts herself. If she forgets anything, it is the way we all do. What day it is, where she left her keys. She is not incompetent. Second, Signora Lucia. She walks slowly to the stand, clutching her shawl, her voice trembling yet fierce. I live next door. I see her every day. She locks her door at night, keeps her books in order, cooks her meals. She is no invalid. She is strong. They want her workshop, nothing more. I pressed my hand to my chest, tears rising. Finally, Marco called a representative from the Venetian Artisan Guild, a man who had purchased masks from me for years. Signora Bellucci's work is legendary. She has supplied Carnival for decades. To strip her of her workshop is to strip Venice of part of its soul. Each testimony stacked upon the other like stones, building a wall against the lies. And then came the deepest wound. My daughter rose herself, walking to the stand with careful grace. Her voice was soft, almost tender. I love my mother. I only want what's best. But she is stubborn, and she doesn't see how much she needs help. This isn't about money. It's about keeping her safe. I have no choice but to protect her from herself. She would not meet my eyes. Her words, coated in honey, dripped poison. I gripped the edge of the table so hard my knuckles whitened. The daughter I had once kissed goodnight, the child I had clothed and fed, now painting me as weak, unstable, unworthy of my own life. It cut deeper than any accusation. The judge finally nodded. Signora Bellucci, you may speak. I rose. My knees trembled, but my back stayed straight. The courtroom blurred for a moment. The judge, the crowd, even my daughter's unreadable face. But I focused on my own voice. Yes, I am nearly 60, I began. Yes, my hands shake sometimes. Yes, the pains make me cough, the nights grow longer, the work heavier. But weakness is not incompetence. Age is not surrender. I paused, breath tight. For 30 years, I have lived behind a mask of sacrifice. I painted while my daughter slept. I bled my fingers so she could eat. I sent money so she could study, so she could live better than I did. Every mask I made carried a piece of me, my breath, my hope, my love. The words quavered, then steadied. I will not deny my age. I will not deny my exhaustion. But I will deny this, that I am nothing but a burden, a relic to be pushed aside. This workshop is my face. It is who I am, and I will no longer let anyone paint over it. The silence was thick, electric. I lifted my chin, voice sharp as a blade. I have been hidden too long. Today, I choose my true face. The judge leaned forward, eyes sharp. He shuffled the papers, spoke slowly, gravely. This court rejects the forged deed. It acknowledges the defendant, Caterina Bellucci, as the sole owner of her workshop. The accusations of incompetence are unfounded. The case is dismissed. The gavel struck. The sound exploded like glass shattering, like a mask breaking in two. The air rushed from my lungs, leaving me dizzy. I sank into my chair, tears spilling freely, but they tasted different. Salt, yes, but not bitter. Sweet, almost. Light streamed through the high windows, golden and soft, catching dust in the air like glitter. For the first time in months, I felt my shoulders loosen, the chains fall away. Across the aisle, my daughter's face hardened, her mask of composure cracking at the edges. She gathered her things quickly, refusing to look at me. I did not chase her. I did not beg. Instead, I closed my eyes and smiled, faint but real. After years of living painted for others, I had at last stepped bare into the light. That night, the silence felt different. Not heavy, not strangling, just vast, like the echo of a bell after it has stopped ringing. The courtroom's voices still clung to me, the judge's solemn tone, the shuffle of papers, the sharp crack of the gavel. Yet here, in my apartment, there was only stillness. The walls, long my prison, stood around me like gentle sentries. For the first time in months, they did not accuse. I sat at the small table by the window, a cup of chamomile cooling between my palms. My hands no longer trembled. I traced the rim of the porcelain, listening to the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. The city outside had quieted, gondolas tethered, shops shuttered, footsteps rare on the stones. I should have felt triumph. I had won. The workshop was mine, my dignity restored, the lies undone. Yet the victory carried no fanfare. Instead, it settled in me like a sigh, relief tangled with sorrow, because though I had kept my face, I had lost hers. I closed my eyes, and for a fleeting moment, I saw her as a child again, perched on my workbench, pressing a white paper mask to her face, giggling. "Mama, is this mask prettier than me?" I had told her then no mask could hide her eyes. Tonight, I wondered if perhaps I had been wrong. Perhaps she had hidden behind her own mask so long that I no longer recognized the eyes behind it. A tear slipped down my cheek, but it did not burn. It was gentle, like rain on old stone. I rose, carried my cup to the sink, and caught my reflection in the darkened window. No rouge, no powder, no painted smile, only me. Wrinkles carved deep from years of labor, lips pressed but soft, eyes shadowed but alive. I lifted my hand and touched my bare skin. For decades, I had painted faces, crafted illusions. I had even painted over myself with sacrifice, obedience, silence. But tonight I felt light, unvarnished, true. I opened the window. Cool air rushed in, carrying the salt of the lagoon, the faint music of a violin drifting from somewhere across the canal. I leaned into it, breathing deep. The city no longer pressed in on me, it embraced me. My gaze fell to the workbench where the scarred white mask still waited. I picked it up, running a finger along the black line I had painted across its surface. Once it had been a symbol of fracture. Now, it felt like a wound that had healed, leaving a mark but no more pain. I set it carefully back, then turned away. In the quiet, I whispered to myself, "I am not finished. I am not erased. I am still here." The words did not echo. They rooted. And in that stillness, I felt something stir, small but undeniable. Not joy, not yet, but a beginning. The river in Lisbon smells different from the canals of Venice. Saltier, rougher, touched by the sea. Every morning, I walked to the same cafe by the Tagus. Its wooden chairs sun-bleached, its awning flapping in the Atlantic wind. The waiter knows me now. He places a small espresso on the table before I even ask. I lift the cup, light as air, no trembling in my hand. The first sip is sharp, bitter, but it slides easily down my throat. I close my eyes, listening, not to the roar of arguments, not to the clatter of gavels, but to the cry of gulls overhead and the distant hum of fishermen shouting across the docks. I think of the airport that day when my ticket vanished and my daughter's words carved me in half. I had stood frozen, clutching a wooden box that felt heavy as stone. Now, I cradle only porcelain, feather light. What once weighed me down has let me go. I sold the old workshop in Venice. The dust, the shelves of half-finished masks, the memories pressed into every beam. It was too full of shadows. With the money, I rented a small studio near the university here in Lisbon. Students come each week, their laughter filling the space where once only silence lived. They dip brushes into bright paints, their fingers stained with gold and crimson. They chatter in Portuguese and English and Italian, voices stumbling but eager. When they ask me how to hold the brush steady, I show them the trick. Exhale as you paint, as though blowing life into the mask. In the corner of the classroom sits one relic, a single white mask, cracked and marked by the black line I once painted across it. I keep it on a shelf, not hidden but displayed. When students ask about it, I smile and say, "That one is my reminder." They don't need to know the whole story, only that every mask carries a truth beneath, and sometimes the bravest act is to remove it. In Venice, I used to rise with dread, dragging myself into the workshop as if into a cage. The mask stared back at me with empty eyes, demanding more of my breath, my years, my life. Here, the faces are different. They do not accuse, they invite. When I paint alongside my students, I no longer feel drained. I feel replenished. I am no longer giving pieces of myself away. I am sharing, multiplying. I used to clutch my phone like a chain, waiting for her voice, for her demands, for her absence. Now the phone rests quietly in my bag. Sometimes days pass before I notice it. I no longer measure my worth in messages sent or money wired. The symmetry is clear. Then a ticket ripped from my hands. Now, a coffee cup I can hold with ease. Then, the suffocating silence of betrayal. Now, the open wind off the sea. At night, when I return to my small apartment, I wash the paint from my hands and catch my reflection in the bathroom mirror. I study my face. Wrinkles deepen around my mouth, crow's feet frame my eyes, my hair has turned nearly silver, but I see no shame there. No disguise. I touch my cheek gently. For decades, I believed love meant covering myself, painting over my desires until nothing remained. But love, real love, does not erase. It illuminates. My daughter has not called. Perhaps she never will. Perhaps she still wears her own mask too tightly to breathe. That is her path, not mine. I do not wait by the phone anymore. I wait only for the sunrise, for the next class, for the laughter of young people learning how to turn emptiness into art. I do not preach to my students. I tell them only this: every mask hides something, but a mask can also reveal. When you paint, choose colors that free you, not colors that bind you. Sometimes I write in my notebook late at night, just a single line. You are allowed to choose your own face. That is my truth, not a sermon, a reminder. One afternoon, after class, I walked alone along the riverside. The wind whipped my hair loose, carrying the salt of the Atlantic. I stopped on a small stone pier, staring out at the endless horizon where the water merged with the sky. I lifted my hands to my face. No powder, no rouge, no mask, just me. And I smiled. And now it is only you and me. I have carried you through courtrooms and kitchens, through betrayals and silences, through the cracking of masks and the slow mending of skin. You have walked beside me step by step as I uncovered the face I thought I had lost. For that, I thank you, not lightly, not politely, but with the full weight of someone who knows what it means to be seen. Because for years, I was invisible. My daughter looked at me and saw only a purse that opened, a hand that painted, a body that bent. Even I stopped seeing myself. Perhaps you too have known that feeling. The slow erasure, the fading of your name under the demands of others. If you have, then you understand why each word I've told you has not just been story, but confession. I do not know what mask you wear. Maybe it is duty. Maybe it is silence. Maybe it is the smile you force when you are breaking inside. I wore all of those. They cut into me until I could barely breathe. But here is the truth I found. Masks can crack. And when they do, the breaking is not always loss. Sometimes it is freedom. So I ask you directly, if one day you discover you are only a supporting role in someone else's play, will you keep wearing their mask, or will you tear it off and step on stage as yourself? Do not answer me now. Let the question sit with you, heavy or light, as it wishes. Let it whisper to you in the quiet moments when you sip your morning coffee, when you stand before the mirror, when you choose whether to say yes or no. I cannot walk your path, but I can tell you this. When I finally laid my mask down, I did not crumble. I breathed, I lived, and I will never return to the silence that once strangled me. If my story stirred something in you, share it. Tell me what mask you have worn and whether you still wear it. Leave your words, your thoughts, your truth. Perhaps someone else who reads them will find the courage to do the same. And if you wish to hear more stories like mine of people who have bled, broken, but also mended, then follow me. Stay with me. Each tale is another crack of light in a world too fond of shadows. Thank you for staying until the end. Thank you for listening through the noise and the silence, for I have left the masks behind, and today I live with my true face.